Welcome back to Voice Advisor, where we focus in on effective practices that facilitate the practice and generalization of a learned social skill, possibly a learned social skill from the Voice app. Now, as you recall, or I'll introduce to you, this accompanies an implementation guide, which will review specifically the steps necessary to facilitate this practice, as well as some illustrations, all available on the Voice Advisor website that I'll reinforce at the end of this short little presentation. Now, today we're going to focus in on an effective practice called recruiting reinforcement. And recruiting reinforcement is, nothing spectacular or nothing really involved, and yet very purposeful and very specific to the needs of individuals with disabilities, particularly those trying to introduce and generalize that social skill into the real world. Now, what is it? Basically, we're turning the table. We're taking that reinforcement that, of course, we offer as educators, and we're trying to have the student recruit it to get that reinforcement. So we're having them definitely be a player in this mix, having them be more proactive, and empowering them to facilitate that reinforcement that they need and do so in a very purposeful manner. Now, why? There's several different reasons. And of course, to begin with, we know reinforcement works. We know if the teacher offers specific praise and feedback, that leads to engagement on the part of the student, and there's a number of other components. And I actually want to focus in today on 5. So number one, what's really critical is the fact that the reality is today's classroom, as yesterday's classroom and tomorrow's classroom, are busy places. Teachers are being pulled in multiple different places. And so they need to be reminded, they need to be recruited for that reinforcement. Number 2 is we want to shift it. We want to shift it to the responsibility of the student for a number of different reasons, particularly to empower them, to be having them part in their own self-determination and their learning. Number 3 is this is a great life skill. It really is. This is something that they can then utilize, as number 4 indicates, across the lifespan. This is something if we teach well in the pre-K and the K through 12, this is something they can use in the vocational skills, be it work, be it future learning, et cetera, et cetera. And it's something that our employers are looking for in terms of recruiting feedback to be able to make changes. The list goes on. And number 5, of course, research. Research is very firm on the fact that recruiting reinforcement is an effective practice, and it leads to development of, as I mentioned just a moment ago, some vocational skills or pre-vocational skills, but also communication skills and a list of other things. So that's enough with the why. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of how we do it. And there's going to be 6 steps that we're going to follow here. And they're not anything unique or anything that's going to take a lot of time, but they are something that we need to really focus in on in terms of the specificity. So number one is we need to introduce the skill. And in introducing the skill on the part of the learner, they need to truly understand what's expected of them to recruit that reinforcement. It's a different skill. It's something that we often don't introduce or reinforce, and so we need to do both. And we need to do it for the learner. So break it down. It might be task and analyze, things of that nature for the individual to understand. Number 2, we need to facilitate recruiting questions. And what I mean by that is questions that the individual can then understand and target to then facilitate with their educator. Now, there's a lot of text here on this slide, and you'll see at the bottom there just some examples with Mr. Williams and what the student could then learn to be able to then focus in on in terms of how they phrase their questions, when to ask them, how to reinforce and continue that in order to then get that reinforcement. Number 3, teach availability. And that is the student needs to understand when that teacher is available. They need to look for signs. It's going to be signs in terms of what's happening, signs in terms of the environment, and a number of other variables. And they need to be aware of that. And they need to determine when it's appropriate and also when it's not appropriate. And so, for example, this is a very busy slide, but here's an example of when it would be appropriate, when there is availability, as well as a non-example when the availability would be very limited and you wouldn't want to get involved with that. And those are 2 critical components for the student to understand. And again, it's going to go along with a lot of variables. And so this step itself may take some time on the part of the learner and the teacher in terms of facilitating that. Number 4 is we need to discuss this with the number of teachers that are involved with the student. Now, at the elementary level, we may have one teacher, but most likely we have several teachers across grade level, or maybe it's across the pod in terms of several 3rd grade teachers, or it might be the fact that we have the PE teacher, the music teacher, et cetera. So they need to be aware of this intervention. They need to be aware that the student is actually practicing it to keep aware that then they need to respond to it. So again, part of this is introducing and discussing this intervention with the teacher. Number 5 is we need to allow them to try it. And in so doing, this might be some prep with the teacher to know that, hey, this coming period they're going to do this, tomorrow they're going to be doing this. It's prepping with the student. It might be giving the students visuals as reminders in terms of what the feedback is looking like and what they need to look for. It could be the examples and non-examples, but very purposeful in that instruction. And number 6, we need to monitor the progress after it's introduced, troubleshoot to see where the problems are. It might be with the student. It might be what the student's misunderstanding. It might be with the teacher or a teacher that we need to facilitate. But that troubleshooting to be able to monitor the successful progress is, of course, key. Now, this is a very busy slide. This is available for you at your leisure to take a look at, but this gives you a little bit more in terms of a lesson that might be affiliated with to further facilitate that recruiting reinforcement. And as always, like all these solutions that's sitting on Voice Advisor, we have an implementation guide that accompanies this. We have a variety of resources folks can get out to that we have not created but are out there to better understand how to recruit reinforcement to facilitate practice and generalization of learned social skills in the real world. Come on back for future solutions on Voice Advisor, and hopefully this has been helpful.